What's up everyone? In this one we are continuing our Elder Scrolls Whodunit, so let's dive into who was the client for each of Nazir's Dark Brotherhood contracts Volume 2. If you haven't seen the first one yet, you can check it out with the link in the top right there. Let's kick Volume 2 off with Lurbuk, the worst bard in all of Skyrim. He is a resident of Morfall that lives in the Moorside Inn where he annoys and pesters innkeeper Jonah's patrons. When Nazir gives this contract, he mentions that many people want Lurbuk dead, so this one is more about guessing just how many people we're talking about here. First, Jonah may have wanted him gone because he was bad for business in an already small town. Second, by similar logic, Idgrod Ravencrone and/or her housecarl Gorm may have ordered the contract on Lurbuk because his presence was having a negative influence on the whole town. In this scenario, I find Gorm more likely because in the miscellaneous quest for the good of Morfall, he shows that he is willing to take action to do what he thinks is best for Morfall. However, Lurbuk's music may have been so bad that people outside of Morfall sought his death as well. Perhaps Viarmo, the headmaster of the Bard's College, hired the Dark Brotherhood to kill Lurbuk because he was giving bards a bad name. There's also one more person who I think sought Lurbuk's death, and that's Chief Burguk of the Dushnik Jarl stronghold. According to the game files, Burguk is Lurbuk's father, which doesn't mean anything on its own since not everything in the game files is canon. But there is reason to believe that this particular piece of info is in fact canon. Burguk may send a letter of thanks for killing Lurbuk, which of course we're not counting as evidence of Burguk's guilt in regards to the contract. However, this is an in-game event that implies a tie between Burguk and Lurbuk, and given what the game files say, and that their names are very similar, I feel safe assuming that these two orcs being father and son is in fact game canon. So why might Burguk have wanted his own son dead? Well, in his dialogue he mentions that eventually one of his sons will slay him and become the new chief. Perhaps he was worried that Lurbuk would be the son to do that and thought that he would be a bad chief. But that wouldn't really make much sense because Lurbuk doesn't seem like much of a fighter and his father really does. In other dialogue, Burguk mentions something called blood price, which must be paid if one breaks the Code of Malakath. He implies that this code is more elaborate for orcs than it is for outlanders, but to give the player some idea of how to follow it, he says that the gist is don't steal anything and don't hurt anyone. So what seems to match up pretty nicely here is that Lurbuk violated this Code of Malakath, and Burguk ordered the contract as payment for this blood price. And I think I might know how he broke this code as well. In one of Lurbuk's conversations with Jonah, she mentions that Lurbuk pays for the room. This seems logical, but you never know if innkeepers have unique arrangements with particular patrons. So if Lurbuk does pay for this room and he doesn't get any sort of discount for helping clean or anything, then that raises a big question. Where does this money he pays with come from? Lurbuk is a terrible bard, so I doubt anyone throws coin his way, yet he pays 10 gold a night for his room and more for food. So where did Lurbuk get this money? Well, I bet it came from Dushnik Jarl. Despite being awful, Lurbuk is rather confident in himself. He honestly believes that he will become a famous bard someday, as if it's a childhood dream. So I bet that he convinced his father to send him to the Bard's College by telling him that he'd work hard every day so that one day he'd become a famous bard. He probably told his father that if he sent him to Solitude with a bunch of money, then he would fulfill his dream and return to the stronghold with a lot more money. Then Lurbuk went on to become the worst bard in all of Skyrim and never delivered any money, which Burguk decided counted as stealing, thus a violation of the Code of Malakath. So he hired the Dark Brotherhood to kill Lurbuk as payment for the blood price. There is a slight issue with this theory. It's also possible for Burguk to send hired thugs after the player for killing Lurbuk if he dies under certain circumstances, which is very inconsistent with the letter of thanks and really this whole theory, but I'm still on board with this theory I presented because I think that Bethesda made a mistake here. Since this is so inconsistent with the rest of the evidence, I doubt that the devs working on the Dark Brotherhood questline intended for the hired thugs to be possible. What probably happened here is someone who wasn't working on that questline saw that Burguk was Lurbuk's father in the game files and added the hired thugs in, not realizing that there was another plan in place. Hence, I'm writing the hired thugs off as a mistake. So I'm accusing Jonah, Gorm, Viarmo, and Chief Burguk of participating in this lottery to purchase a contract on Lurbuk. As for who won the contract, some might suggest that the person with the most money got it, but I hesitate to go in that direction because Nazir uses the word lottery, not auction, which is consistent with the lore's implication that the Dark Brotherhood doesn't care about money very much. For them, it's more about having a presence, living their lives in service to Sithis, and keeping their services available for all people, which helps maintain the equality of the whole thing. Operating based on money would give rich people an unfair advantage, which really I think is the key difference between the Dark Brotherhood and other Assassin's Guilds in Elder Scrolls. Hence, I don't think there's a way for us to find out who actually won this lottery, so I'm just accusing everyone I've talked about so far of seeking Lurbuk's death. Next up is Hern. He and his wife Hert are vampires that own the Heartwood Mill on the west side of Lake Ilinalta. Our first suspect is Dengir of Stun. During the quest Dark Ancestor, Dengir asks the player to kill his ancestor Vigar, who is a vampire. Dengir wants this deed kept quiet because he wants the fact that he is a descendant of a vampire to remain a secret. So perhaps Hern and Hert knew too much about Dengir's ancestry and he silenced them for it. There's no evidence that they had any involvement with the Bloodlight clan, but it's possible. However, there's an issue with this theory. The contract is specifically placed on Hern, not both of them, and I'm inclined to think that Hern would share a secret like Dengir's with his wife. Remember, the Dark Brotherhood doesn't seem to charge a fixed rate for contracts, they just seem to accept whatever the client pays. So the client isn't necessarily saving money on just ordering the kill on Hern and hoping that Hert gets caught in the crossfire. Also, even if it was more expensive to target both, Dengir seems to be good for the money. Hence, in all likelihood, the client was only seeking Hern's death, and Hert was either irrelevant, or she herself was the client. Observe what happens when the player engages Hern in her presence. At first, she joins the fight, but when Hern is killed, she stops fighting and can be spoken to as if nothing happened. Sometimes it takes her a while to stop fighting, but she always will eventually. So what the heck? Oh, you just murdered my husband, but whatever? It's as if she doesn't care, so maybe she is our culprit. Now let's take a closer look to see if we can figure out a motive. She has some notable scarring on her face, and her name is Hert with an E, which is very phonetically similar to Hurt with a U, as if she represents being hurt. So I'm thinking that this is an abusive marriage, and Hert ordered the contract on Hern out of desperation. Some might ask, well, if that's the case, then why does she attack the player at all? Why not help kill Hern? Well, for one thing, that would make it pretty obvious that she is the client. Also, this behavior is consistent with being a victim of abuse. She could be so afraid of Hern that she just can't bring herself to disobey him. Another issue with this theory is, if Hert is the client, then why does Nazir say that you'll probably have to deal with her too? And I also have an explanation for this one. She probably went through a middleman to set this contract up, which again is consistent with her being a victim of abuse. She is being as secretive as she possibly can because she is terrified that Hern will find out somehow. Also, she mentions travelers and patrols that come through Heartwood Mill. Maybe one of these visitors is the middleman. One more problem with this theory is that the crime does get reported, even if only Hert witnesses the kill. But remember, Bethesda wants this to be a mystery, so I'm thinking that they just left this as is, one, because they'd have to script a unique circumstance to make it so the crime doesn't get reported this one time, and two, because doing that would make it very obvious that Hert is in fact the client. Hence, I accuse Hert of ordering the contract on Hern, but her reasons are understandable, and I'll be glad to help her out when I do this quest in future playthroughs. Let's move on to Deekus. He's a scavenger that's currently excavating Hellas Folly just northeast of Dawnstar. The obvious motive here is that someone wanted to steal his haul from the shipwreck. So who would know about Deekus' excavation over there? Well, the sailors from Dawnstar would pass by here when they're sailing east, wouldn't they? So I looked into the sailors, and I think the most likely culprit is Ravam Varethi. He is unhappy with his job on board the Sea Squall, and he seems to be looking for a way out. I'm thinking that Ravam saw Deekus' camp on one of their trips and maybe caught a glimpse of the Debella statue and the chest that Deekus had recovered. Upon observing this scene, Ravam saw an opportunity for a way out of the shipping business. If Deekus were to die, he could steal the haul and sell it for a nice profit to keep himself on his feet until finding a new job. The only thing standing in his way was Deekus, and he wasn't sure that he could kill Deekus himself, so he hired the Dark Brotherhood to do it for him. I do have another suspect, and this one stems from one of the many theories that I presented about Bethesda's New Year's tweet from a few years ago. If you haven't seen that video yet, I highly recommend checking it out with the link in the top right there. It's one of the videos I'm most proud of because I dove into so much lore and did so much research to figure all that stuff out. So in that video, one of the theories I talked about was that Sadia may have fled Hammerfell on the ship that's now a wreck at Hellas Folly. If that's true, then maybe she had Deekus killed because she was worried about him discovering some loose ends that she left behind there. While this is an entertaining thought, I'm more confident in the first suspect. For that video, I was really just presenting everything that I thought could be relevant to the tweet because that's what I deemed best for that particular video, since the tweet is so cryptic. Of course, there is a chance that my Sadia theory from that video is true, and she did order the contract on Deekus, but if I'm choosing between that and the Ravam theory, I'm going to have to go with the latter, because it just feels like less of a stretch to me. Hence, I accuse Ravam Varethi of ordering the contract on Deekus. For a fourth spot, we've got Marandra Joe, a member of Rasad's trading caravan. Many theorize that this one has to do with racism towards Khajiit, but I don't think it's that simple. Why specifically Marandra Joe? If it's racially motivated, then why not take out one of the leaders like Rasad? That would make a much bigger statement. So I don't think that's the direction to go in here. Let's take a closer look at the caravan. Listen to this conversation between Marandra Joe and Adaba.
I won't ache for the moon sugar. It has been too long since I tasted it.
You know that our supply is limited. It could be a season or more before we get a new shipment from the south.
My ears hear the truth in your words, and yet my body shakes with the need.
Control yourself. Do not frighten away our customers with your fits.
Yes, of course, you are right. Still, I would give much for even a few grains of moon sugar.
Put the thought out of your mind, and do not speak of it again.
So apparently they have a system in place where they split their supply of moon sugar, but they have to ration because they never have very much at one time, and Adaba's having cravings and perhaps other withdrawal symptoms. So maybe Adaba ordered the contract on Marandra Joe so that there would be one less person to split the moon sugar with. This is intriguing, but I have another candidate that I like much more. In Candlehearth Hall in Windhelm, there's an author named Adonato Liatelli. He's a minor character with one miscellaneous quest where he has you deliver his draft of Olaf and the Dragon to the Bard's College. However, that is not his only publication. In his other book, Ghosts in the Storm, he tells the story of how he arrived in Windhelm. Apparently, he was traveling with Rasad's caravan for what sounds like a long time before he settled in Windhelm. During a terrible snowstorm, they were ambushed by a group of Falmer, and these Falmer managed to kill someone named Bisha before the others managed to fight them off. Afterward, the survivors made it to Windhelm, then Adonato took up residence in Candlehearth Hall, and the others left without him. He implies that the experience scared him to the point that he decided to retire from traveling with the caravan, but maybe there's more to the story. I think that Adonato blamed Marandra Joe for Bisha's death for some reason. Perhaps he was near her when the Falmer got her, but opted to protect himself instead of trying to save her. So why would Adonato care so much about Bisha that he would hire the Dark Brotherhood to kill the person that he feels is most responsible for her death? Well, maybe there was another reason that he stayed with the caravan for so long besides his interest in traveling. I think that he was in love with Bisha, and he stayed with the caravan for so long either because he was trying to earn her affections or because the affections were earned and they were together. That would explain why he stuck around for so long, then very suddenly left the group when she died. He was mourning Bisha's loss, and continuing with his travels would just remind him of her. Some might say, well, isn't it a bit strange for an Imperial to be in love with a Khajiit? Actually, it fits perfectly considering that Bethesda is a company that loves throwbacks and homages. What defines Adonato to you, the player? He's an author. What other Elder Scrolls character would you say that about? Crassius Curio from Morrowind, the author of the lusty Argonian Maid. As one might guess from reading The Lusty Argonian Maid, Curio is also known for being very, well, open. I'll just leave it at that. So I think what we've got here with Ghosts in the Storm and this contract is a hidden homage to Crassius Curio, and I accuse Adonato Liatelli of hiring the Dark Brotherhood to kill Marandrajo for failing to save the life of the woman he loved. Last on our agenda for Volume 2 is Anoriath, one of the owners of the Drunken Huntsman in Whiterun. While his brother mans the shop, he goes hunting in the grassy plains of Whiterun Hold, and when he's done, he mans the market stall. In the first volume, I told you that the reason I think Bethesda did put some thought into who the client might have been for each contract is because there is one contract that has a pretty obvious culprit, so if they have an answer for one, they probably do for all of them. And guess what? This is that contract. Given the evidence, it's pretty obvious who wanted Anoriath dead. First, I'll provide some context. During the quest Missing in Action, the player is tasked with retrieving a letter from the House of Clan Battleborn. The quest will simply mark the letter, so most players will just go in and steal it. However, there are other ways to get it that are unmarked, and unfortunately many players never figure that out. You can actually convince a few members of the Battleborn clan to get it for you through various methods, which for me is so much more fun than just stealing it. One way to get it is to pickpocket John Battleborn and take his letter from Ulfina. It reveals that John and Ulfina have a secret relationship, which of course they keep a secret because of the ongoing feud between their families. The whole situation is right out of Romeo and Juliet. So once you pickpocket this letter from John Battleborn, you can use it to blackmail him into getting the other letter for you. But what's important for our purposes is the existence of this secret love affair between Ulfina Greymane and John Battleborn. Listen to the following conversation between Anoriath and Ulfina Greymane.
Ah, Ulfina, how may I help you?
Got any sausages? I'm cooking a special breakfast for a friend, and they're his favorite.
Would your good friend be named John, by any chance? I've spied the two of you talking quite intimately.
Best you forget whatever you think you saw, Elf. Such idle talk can prove hazardous to one's health.
So more than likely, Ulfina had Anoriath killed because he knew too much about her relationship with John. One could argue that it may have been John for the same reason, but given that it's Ulfina that actually has the conversation, I think it's much more likely that it's her. Hence, I accuse Ulfina Greymane of ordering the contract on Anoriath because she wanted her love affair with John to remain a secret. She feared that her family would cast her out if they knew, or maybe the fact that it was a secret was part of the fun for her and she just wanted to keep it spicy. Who knows? So that's it for Volume 2 of Who Was the Client for each of Nazir's Dark Brotherhood contracts. If you want to be notified when the next one comes out, make sure you're subscribed so it'll appear on your subscriptions tab when I publish it. If you'd rather receive an email, then make sure you hit the notification bell once you're subscribed, then it'll also send an email to your inbox. Thank you for watching, please like, subscribe, comment, share, everything you do helps me build towards monetization and helps other Skyrim fans find this video. See you next time.